we wouldn't be talking about Saint Peter Julian Eymard if it wasn't for the Eucharist. John the 23rd, at the end of the Second Vatican Council, canonized Saint Peter Julian Eymard, and in that speech spoke of Saint Peter Julian Eymard as the apostle of the Eucharist. So his love for the Eucharist and his Eucharistic sense of mission and evangelization are so central to who he is. So far we've been talking about his early years and his development of a vocation, his early ministry, and then his joining the Society of Mary and love for the Society of Mary. But today I'd like to focus on this central piece of the Eucharist and the growing inspiration in him and love of Eucharist to eventually found a religious order dedicated to the Eucharist. But first, just that sense of discernment, how did that grow in him? Where did this start to unfold, this love of Eucharist and sense of Eucharistic mission?
I would like to say that this begins at a general chapter, May 7th, 1854, in which Jean-Claude Colin, the Superior General, is addressing the members, and he now tells them a thought, a movement in his soul about a Eucharistic work, because he sees that the Society of Mary is called to assist this work, but at the same time, he does not want to put the society at risk, him giving himself to this work at the neglect of the society. But he believes that it is an important work because it will bring the people back to the feet of Jesus Christ and will, in a way, begin to bring the spirit of the early church back at a time when, again, the Catholic Church is being rebuilt in France post-revolution.
I think that context is helpful to recognize. Eymard is situated in a time period coming out of the French Revolution, and the Catholic Church was really in a period of trying to of rebirth, or trying to come back together after that, and so Eucharist was a central piece that I think many different religious orders and the general Catholic population saw as something valuable that needed to be lifted back up to draw people together. So it sounds like Colin was responding to that as well, but within the context of the mission of the Society of Mary. So how did Colin then get Eymard involved?
Well, the fact is that Peter Julian Eymard is a close associate of Colin, and he is aware of everything that's going on. And in this case, as Visitor General, Assistant General, he has a contact with places. In 1854-55, he is in Toulon, and the bishop there assigns Eymard to be in charge of the nocturnal adoration, people who are members of that association. So much so that Peter Julian then purchases a house in order to house men who want to work in this association. And much to the, although Colin gives his blessing, again, Peter Julian races to it, is much ahead of him, and everything is going by the time that Father Colin gives a blessing. And again, then he is aware of this Eucharistic movement that's developing.
So here again we see that Father Eymard isn't one to do things halfway. He's kind of the person who throws himself in with a great deal of energy and passion into whatever he's doing. And he's working with the lay associates of the Society of Mary, and also now with these people involved in nocturnal adoration. And so he's bringing Eucharist into these lay groups and nurturing that. So it's already part of his ministerial life. But then after that, he has some bigger inspirational moments. I wonder if you could share some of these kind of bigger inspirations of his.
There are two specific graces that he receives. The first one is the celebrated Corpus Christi procession in the Church of St. Paul, May 25th, 1845.
And that's in Lyon.
In Lyon, the Church of St. Paul in Lyon. And during that procession, he tells us that he was penetrated deep with the great faith and love of Jesus Christ, and that he felt a very strong attraction to the person of Jesus Christ Eucharist. And then, as a result of that awareness, he then states, I will pray and preach. In my preaching, in my spiritual direction, in the confessional, I will present the person of Jesus Christ Eucharist.
It's a really powerful moment because he wrote about that, and we've both been to that church, and the words he uses, it was very much an experience that he wanted to share with so many people. He said, the Church of France and the whole world, that he prayed for the zeal of St. Paul. So it's definitely a evangelical type of experience that he wants to go out and preach and share this great love of God in the Eucharist. He doesn't quite know what to do with it. I mean, he's just got all of this energy and this powerful experience, but he speaks very beautifully about that moment.
Yeah. It's over a 2-hour period that he has this experience. And he goes as far as petitioning, yes, I want the spirit of St. Paul. He'll be my new protector in this. But also he prays to Our Lady, stating that she may bring about the spirit of her divine Son, so that Jesus is personified in Eymard's person. This is a very short line, one sentence, at the end of his reflection on this experience, and that he hopes to hear the words of Christ tell him, you have spoken well of me, Peter. Mm. And that's how he concludes that great experience of that feast.
So even in that experience, you see still a connection with Mary. So, I mean, he's a Marist, and even within that experience, he's making a connection between Eucharist and Mary. So it's in continuity.
Yes, and again, again referring to the archivist, historian Father Mayet, stating that it was only natural, the great devotion that Eymard had to Mary is natural. Our Lady will bring souls to Christ in the Eucharist. So the connecting piece is always there.
So that was the first big experience of inspiration and connection with Eucharist that you wanted to highlight. What was the second experience of Eucharist that you wanted to highlight?
The second one will take place in La Seine while he is the headmaster, the superior. And this takes place April 18, 1853. It is the feast of Saint Joseph Transferred. The students are on holiday, and Father Eymard now celebrates the Eucharist, and during his Thanksgiving, now he is again, there's an inspiration, the inspiration, and he is just taken with the person of Christ within him. And he says, Lord, what more can I do for you? And then he realizes, he struggles because now he's beginning to realize that he may have to leave the society to do this work. And he doesn't really want to. The struggle is there, but he then tells our Lord, whatever you want me to do, I will.
It's interesting, in the second inspiration that you just described, that we see in Father Eymard a general disposition that will ultimately call, much later on in his spiritual life and development, the gift of self. It's not fully realized here, but it is that still coming from that same place of wanting to give himself completely to Christ for whatever work that God has for him.
That's correct. The gift of donation, which is a term that is given by the historian as he records this. The third grace, which is more now putting on paper what Father Eymard perceives as the rationale for establishing the congregation, is done in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament in the Basilica of Our Lady of Fouvier. He sits there and he writes two rationales. The first one is the need of the priests and lay people to have spiritual direction for their personal spiritual life. The second one is the need of a congregation given to the person of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist as adorers of the Blessed Sacrament. Those are the two principal pieces that he gives.
And all of this is happening while he's in the midst of numerous kinds of ministries and work within the Society of Mary and within the different dioceses in which he's working.
For example, in a letter he is writing to one of the Third Order members, he has just finished celebrating Mass for a group of army soldiers, 1855, the Crimean War, and he tells her how wonderful it was to be able to celebrate this Eucharist for these men. He calls them the future martyrs, and that he has given them the Blessed Sacrament. He has been able to distribute prayer cards, medals of Our Lady, and now that he will pray for them, but how honored he was to celebrate for them. So these pieces are constantly, plus his work as an administrator in the congregation, in the society, so that therefore he's involved in his daily ministry.
So Eymard has had a number of these inspirations, and then entering into work that is Eucharistic work. It begins to kind of focus and crystallize once he has a sense of this, what he feels he's called to, and what his kind of Eucharistic passion. What does he do with that?
As a religious, he then presents himself to Father Colin, who is now retired, but as founder, Father Eymard sits with him and explains this inspiration that he has. And Father Colin tells him, yes, this is a valid call, but it will probably not be part of the society's work. So at that moment then, Colin has pointed to Eymard that this may require him to leave the society. In a second conversation...
So he validates that it's a good work, that he senses God's presence in it.
That's
but he
correct.
sees it as kind of falling outside the scope of the mission of the Society of Mary.
That's correct. The second conversation that he has is with the Superior General, Father Favre. And in that conversation, Father Favre is points very clearly, what proof do you have for these inspiration? Do you have a vision, some miraculous appearance, talk? And Father Eymard says no. It has been a very strong inspiration. I've pulled back. It has been present for about 4 years or so. I've pulled back because I've become frightened of the sacrifice that I may have to do. And so I have not fully jumped into it, but now I need to look at it clearer. At that moment, Father Favre says to him, and will you leave the society? What about your vows? And Father Eymard says, if I have to leave the society and give up my vows, I will. But I petition you, Father, please dispense me of my vows in friendship, that I may always be united to the society. And the next will be Father Eymard going into retreat to discern the founding of the Institute.
So it's a discernment and a challenge for Eymard to kind of reach this point, and yet he still feels very much called to embrace this Eucharistic work from the experiences he's had, but also from the inspirations that have come along the way. It's interesting that Favre is asking for visions and different kinds of things of that nature, or proofs of this. Because Eymard is kind of pointing to a different type of discernment. Pope Francis talks about that now in his recent book about the importance of discernment and being open to the Spirit.
It is very interesting and important to know that these inspirations coming from God it comes to the person as he or she is involved in daily life. And in the case of Peter Julian Eymard founding a congregation, that the inspiration for such a founding is steeped in history, in the time frame in which the founder lives, because the founder has studied the situation, the environment, in order to understand the meaning of the call and the direction in which his congregation is going to serve the church and the state.
And I know you've said to me about this in a previous conversation that you see this really as a type of organic growth, a type of flowering of his Eucharistic calling, as a growth in his life and spirituality.
I personally, reading this life and now reaching this moment of his final explanation to his superiors, stems from that child who sat on that altar table stating, I am near Jesus, I am close to Jesus, and listening to him. And now he listens to him through the inspirations, and now has struggled with that because of the sacrifice that he'll have to do, give up his religious society of Mary that he loves, but he will do this to fulfill the desire, the call of the Spirit, now to contribute to the society in which he works, in the world, in the historical situation of France, to now again rebuild not only the church, but the faithful through the mystery of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist.